So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on navigating compliance in banking and finance, leveraging DORA to uplift operational resilience. So the Digital Operational Resilience Act is an EU regulation designed to manage and reduce technology risks in the financial sector. DORA was accepted in November 2022. Financial institutions and tech service providers must follow DORA rules by January 2025. My name is Wael, and I'm the Director of Cyber Resilience at Cyber Rescue. We work with executives at hundreds of firms, such as Virgin Money, Tesco Bank, Sainsbury, and the Bank of China, helping them measure, monitor, and mitigate cyber risks. We're hosting today's webinar with Runecast, who help save money and time on compliance management and vulnerability remediation using their award-winning platform. They're trusted by the likes of HMRC, NATO, Ministry of Defense, and the US Army to provide a continuous analysis of compliance and vulnerability posture, reducing attack surface and bridging the gap between security and operations. Now, DORA is a huge challenge for many firms, so let's start helping immediately. We'll be talking later about how leading firms are auto-reporting, auto-scripting for resolution of vulnerabilities that reduce operational resilience. But not everyone on this call will be familiar with why automation is so important to implement DORA effectively. I'm delighted by investing in the next 30 minutes to learn about this important topic. You will have earned a customized, bespoke, complementary assessment of your own critical systems. To maximize our time today, we'll focus on delivering rich content and skip the Q&A. But don't worry, we will offer a complimentary assessment in a few weeks to address all your specific questions. In the meantime, please do note down your thoughts in the chat, and we look forward to addressing them individually. I'll be handing over to our main speaker, Michiel de Lepper, an expert on the topic. Michiel is Runecast's Global Enablement Manager and has been in the IT security industry for over 15 years. Without further ado, next up, Michiel, take the lead, please.
Perfect. Thank you very, very much, Wael. And thank you, everyone, for joining today. So, as Wael said, we're going to be talking a little bit about compliance and DORA today and how this can impact you as a financial institution. So, let's look at what's on the menu today. Really, I'm going to start off with a little bit about compliance and why this is important. Then I'm going to shift down a little bit into the complexities of the modern enterprise, and I'm going to talk about the level of preparedness that you as an organization need to take. Then we're going to switch it a little bit and move into solutioning and really look at, okay, so how do you get on top of this? And then we're going to be applying this to DORA. So I'm going to talk a little bit about DORA. What is DORA? When do you need to be DORA compliant? Who needs to be DORA compliant? And what's involved? And then finally, how we can help and how the Cyber Rescue Alliance can help you to achieve that DORA compliance that is so critically important if you're in the financial industry. So with that said, let's continue and let's kick this off and start off a little bit about compliance. And I always have a question here. So I ask everyone, okay, why do we need to be compliant? We all know we need to be compliant. However, what we don't do is really stand still about the fact of why I need to be compliant. Yes, you need to be compliant in order to do business. So you're a financial institution and someone tells you you need to be compliant. Absolutely. Right. But the underlying reason is that compliance helps an organization to implement a set of checks and balances, if you want. And this is really meant to ensure that you're operating as safely as possible and thus minimizing risk. The ultimate goal of compliance is minimizing risk for you as an organization and, more broadly speaking, for the industry overall. So I always think a picture says more than 1,000 words. And this is a visual representation of data breaches up until 2022. And these are only with 30K records or above. So it's not even the full picture. And really, when we look at this, compliance is meant to stop this from happening to your organization. You're minimizing risk so you don't get a breach. This is really what it's meant to do. So now that we've defined why we need compliance, let's switch gears a little bit. And let's then look at the complexities of our environments and really why visibility right now is key. Because, right, yes, I need to be compliant. I now know why I need to be compliant. So let's get compliant. Easier said than done. And the reason why is that really when we look at our environments, the reality is that all of our environments are getting more and more complex. And this happens because more and more solutions are added each year to cover yet another new technology that's being introduced. And each time this requires more training, more time spent, and yet another set of reports that gets added without really creating a holistic view of your problems. And the paradox here is really that by adding more technology to help you, you continue to lose visibility. Very much I can't see the forest through the tree situation. And you can't protect what you can't see. And this is applicable not only to your offices, right? Your main office and any site locations that you may have, but as we transform the infrastructure world, it also counts for your data centers, whether these are on-prem or hosted somewhere. And of course, let's not forget about the cloud transformation that we're currently going through for years now, right? So the second part of the infrastructure transformation is really shifting things towards the likes of Azure and Amazon Web Services or GCP, for instance. But not only that, also the SaaS applications we all use in our daily lives. All of these need to be covered by your organization. So the reality here is really that achieving that compliance benchmark that you need is really, really difficult because of the complexity of what you see before you. So you need to have visibility. So let's switch gears here a little bit again, and let's look at this from a slightly different point of view and look at the maturity model. So this is a compliance maturity model. I'm sure a lot of you have seen models like this, but this is specifically meant for compliance. And really what we're doing here is we're looking at the different stages that an organization needs to go through in order to achieve that compliance level that they want. And generally organizations start with reactive, where really your compliance isn't really driven by anything. It's very ad hoc. All of your business units are very siloed and you're very uncoordinated. Then you enter something called the preliminary phase. And the preliminary phase generally tends to be what I call the oh dear phase, because there's a need established. Something has happened, whether you failed an audit or you got breached, but something has happened where that need to be compliant and that need to be protected and minimize risk is established. So in that part, you're going to start putting together basic policies and some basic controls to help you cordon off things a little bit more. And very quickly, you're going to discover that I really need more in order to achieve this. So you're going to establish some leadership and you're going to define policies that are overarching across your entire organization and some controls to not only monitor where you are, but also measure so that you have proper KPIs and proper data to feed back. And at this point, you're going to discover, hey, this is really, really hard. It's going to cost me a lot of time. It's going to cost me a lot of man hours, thus a lot of money. So let's start implementing some automation. Once we start playing around with automation, generally we tend to move into the integrated stage, which is the second last stage. And when we finally move into that integrated stage, generally your compliance efforts across your organizations are very well funded. The business units responsible for this are staffed. There are very clear cross-functional and organizational-wide policies and procedures in place so that you as an organization can drive this. You have very effective controls that actually help you to measure compliance. Right? You can have controls, but you always need to measure. And you need to have data feeding back of where are you. And you're relying more and more on automation because it is very hard. And then lastly, the final stage is really the gold standard. And this is the stage where every organization should strive to be at. And this is the optimized state. And this really is the stage where you as an organization will have continuous compliance, where your security and a compliance-aware culture exist across every level of your organization. Because security generally needs people. You can have all of the solutions that you want. If someone clicks on a bad link, you can still be left open. If someone gives away their password, you can still be left open. So it's not only a technology discussion, it's a culture discussion as well. But you need to have very comprehensive processes and policies in place. And these need to be across geos, and they need to be across the entire tech stack. And then lastly, across all of the functional business units within your organization. And when you implement all of this, you have a very high degree of measurability. And you have a very high degree of automation, because this is hard and automation will help you. And if you do all of this right, you can strive for continuous compliance, which means that you always strive to be compliant at every single moment of time, because compliance is meant to minimize risk, and you need to always minimize risk. And as a positive plus side on that, you're always going to be audit ready, which will make your life easier as well. And our job as Runecast, and in extension with the help of the Cyber Rescue Alliance, is to get you from where you are in this journey, whether you're reactive or defiant or preliminary. We get you to optimized as fast as we can possibly get you, while still doing it right, which is the key part there. Doing it right. It needs to be sustainable for you as an organization. So I want to pause here for a second and ask you, as the audience, and just think about this. How mature are your compliance efforts across your specific organization? So think about this. And then my next follow-up question is, how do you actually know? And this is generally where we run into issues, because a lot of the times people don't. Oh yeah, no, we're very good with my compliance efforts. How do you know? Well, we've passed an audit 2 weeks ago. That's great. So are you still in compliance? Well, the audit said we were. Yes, but that's 2 weeks ago. Are you compliant right now? And that's one of the key problems. And that is so incredibly hard to answer. So we can help you with that. So we've talked about the problems, we talked about the challenges. So let's switch gears here a little bit now. And let's talk about, okay, how do you as an organization actually get to the top of that maturity model and get to that point where you can really strive for that continuous compliance? So first of all, we need to go back to the basics. And initially, I mentioned that visibility is really, really important in complex environments. And I'd even go further. Visibility must be the very basis on which all of the other steps are built upon. And this means not only establishing visibility across what's known, but also finding those unknown dark corners of your infrastructure. Again, you can't protect what you can't see. And not knowing always means you're going to be reactive. So policies need to be established within your organization around things like cloud usage and personal assets, or right, that server that's sitting in the basement running some web server that no one really knows about anymore. Asset management and discovery need to be part of the process. This is the very, very first step that you as an organization need to do. You need to create visibility. And then for the next step, we're going to build on that achieved visibility. And now we're going to need to start putting things like policies and procedures and controls in place to really tackle that very first aspect of our environment and our infrastructure, namely vulnerabilities. And for this, you need to scan your entire environment. And you need to, right? Because you want to discover where you are vulnerable. And once you know that, you're going to put processes and controls in place to achieve a very good coverage and efficacy. And after that, we need to start to prioritize so we can get to a very timely remediation and allows you to align those limited resources that you have and your efforts to where it is the most critical. And one of the key aspects around all of this is the need to have ownership assigned. Both of these sets and tasks independently, right? You need to have ownership of the discovery process, and someone needs to have ownership of the remediation process. And then independently, you need to put reporting and tracking in place for your vulnerability assessments and across your remediation efforts. And this allows you to know how many vulnerabilities you have and how many new ones you have per given time period, and how many you're actually fixing. And if there's a disconnect between those two, you need to start adjusting your processes. So it's very critical that we look at this. And next up comes the compliance assessment, because generally vulnerabilities and compliance go hand in hand. And there are many, many different compliance and security standards out there. And all of them have variations in their body of checks and required adherence. So the first thing you as an organization need to do is establish, okay, what's actually regulatory? What's internal? Which standards are a must for us to follow? And which ones are nice to have? And you need to do this across any technology and across any geo that is being served by your organization. And you need to prepare for audits, not when the auditor has announced the audit, but as part of the course. So organizations need to run continuous reporting and need to put controls in place to ensure that all of those standards are being followed. And that any potential of non-compliance can be very effectively and speedily be remediated. And by now, you've discovered this is really, really tricky. And oh my God, how am I going to do this? Because I don't have enough money or people to actually do this on a continuous basis. Because we've all been in those situations, right? You're getting an audit, and 6 to 8 weeks, the auditors are ducking down in the meeting room somewhere, and everyone is scrambling to bring everything on board. It's really, really hard. So you need to have automation. So now that we have those proper policies and procedures in place, and we know where our assets are, and we can deal with things like remediation if and when it's needed, we're still not as efficient as we should be in our compliance effort. And what we've created so far are reporting, assessment, and remediation policies, drastically increasing that level of compliance and reducing our risk exposure. All of these are really, really great. But the last and final step to truly optimize this is to make sure that all of those processes are automated, as to limit the human input required to keep your infrastructure secure and compliant. And we can use all of our policies and then create automated rules for how your organization actually deals with things like new vulnerabilities. So think about alerting on this, or a configuration that's out of compliance. So remediate that automatically using automation tools. All of these things can be automated to a certain degree, making this so much easier to actually maintain and not letting all of that effort go to waste. So with these steps, and if they're created the way they should, and they're followed by your organization, which is a very critical part, right? Essentially, your organization has created a continuous compliance framework, which not only automates the discovery, the classification, the assessment, and the remediation, but has also created the controls that monitor and measure adherence, adoption, and potential risk exposure. And all of this with as few manual steps possible. Essentially, making your organization audit ready at all times. So this is how you get to the top. Now, let's apply this to DORA. This is why we're here today, right? DORA is very, very new. Well, not that new. I'll show you the timeline in a minute. But it's new to a lot of people. And DORA stands for Digital Operational Resilience Act, which is an EU act, right? So DORA is a new security standard, and it addresses an important issue in the EU, specifically around financial regulation, and is transforming really the way that financial institutions approach digital resilience. And if you're in banking, financial services, or a large insurance sector, for instance, also known as BFSI, understanding the complexity of DORA is absolutely vital, as it will impact your daily operations, your security protocols, your compliance measures, and so much more. And seeing as this is a EU financial regulation, it's absolutely not optional. This is required. So let's look a little bit about the timeline, right? So DORA was published on a draft form in September 2020. Once the draft was reviewed and everyone got feedback and went through that entire process, on the 28th of November 2022, DORA was officially adopted by the EU. And on 16th of January 2023, DORA went into effect. So DORA is already in effect. There is, however, a slight nuance in this. Right. So right now, where we are now in 2024, organizations are busy to have the regulatory and the implementation standards to define those, and they're being issued currently. But generally, how these acts work, 24 months after DORA entered into force, the implementation period ends. And this is what I tend to call D-Day. This is DORA date, 17th of January 2025. And on the 17th of January 2025, each and every single financial institution in the EU is expected to be DORA compliant. And not just expected, required to be DORA compliant. So mark this in your calendars as D-Day, because you will need to. And now is the time to start looking at this. Actually, about 6 months ago. But we really need to start looking at this. Because as you've seen beforehand, getting to that automatic continuous compliance stage is hard. We can help, absolutely. But you need to have the time to go through this process. So, who is DORA actually applicable to? Right? Financial is really, really big. So when we look at the scope of DORA, if you fall in any of these categories, DORA is applicable to you. And one thing I'd like to draw your attention to is the ICT third-party service providers. If you as a financial organization leverage third-party ICT providers, they need to be DORA compliant as well. So very, very critical there. So the financial industry is very broad, and essentially DORA applies to all of those. So let's look a little bit deeper into DORA. Now, obviously, this is an act, so I can't read out the entire act to you. I could, but we need a whole lot more time than we currently have today. So let's look at some of the key responsibilities here, right? So starting off with digital resilience testing. And this really ensures that systems are regularly tested to identify vulnerabilities and assess resilience against potential disruptions. So IT practitioners must therefore develop and oversee protocols that include things like stress tests and scenario analysis. And if there is an incident, you need to manage this incident and report it. So incident reporting and management includes creating and managing strategies for a very prompt response to significant digital incidents. And this includes coordinating with relevant stakeholders and also complying with DORA's reporting requirements, because you will need to report this. And as a financial institution, you need to do third-party risk management. And third-party risk management really calls for conducting very thorough assessments and continuous monitoring of risks related to any third-party service providers that you leverage. So IT practitioners must establish and enforce risk management. And they must establish those risk management protocols to align with the DORA standards, because that's why they're there. And then lastly, from a key responsibility point of view, there's the technology investments. And this really entails aligning with up-to-date technology standards for things like risk detection and prevention and mitigation. So IT practitioners are responsible for evaluating, selecting, and implementing necessary technologies and tools that also, once again, adhere to DORA's requirements. Now, we've talked about the responsibilities, but it wouldn't be a compliance standard if there weren't challenges. And of course, there's challenges. Right, so let's talk about the three main key challenges that we have. And the first one really is compliance complexity. This is not easy. So understanding and complying with DORA's various rules and regulations can be a very complex task. And it varies, its various provisions and covering different aspects of your digital resilience will lead to complexities in actually understanding exactly what is required from you and how to actually implement this stuff. And then once you have that, you need to somehow integrate this with your existing systems. So seamless integration of DORA's rules may require modification to the existing systems and processes. And this involves a potentially very complicated alignment with your current IT infrastructure, including changes to things like data handling or your security protocols and so much more, which will be very difficult and time consuming. And then lastly, of course, there's the cost implications. All of this will cost time and money. Complying with DORA's requirements really involves significant financial investments in technology, training, and staffing. Meeting these compliance needs within budget constraints, especially for smaller institutions, is a considerable challenge and really requires careful financial planning and management. And of course, as you're well aware, right, DORA isn't the only compliance standard that you need to adhere to. DORA is just the latest one. So you still need to stay up to date to everything else that is relevant to your industry. Things like GDPR, ISO, PCI DSS, for instance. So this isn't easy. Now, you may have noticed that I haven't really talked about Runecast. And in order to really understand what we do, it was very important for me to go through these processes and help you understand how these processes do. And we can help you with all of these key aspects: visibility, vulnerability, compliance, and automation. So in short, our platform can help you with all of this. So we offer a single platform with a true single architecture and not a mismatch of different solutions you somehow need to integrate. And with this platform, you're able to really effectively manage your security compliance, your containerized deployments, and streamline your IT operations. And we do this across on-prem, hybrid, and multi-cloud. So much so that we're now the official technology partner for VMware for DORA compliance. So we're extremely excited to be working with VMware to address the challenges that financial services firms face in gaining visibility and also managing your EU DORA compliance posture. And doing this in a multi-cloud world. And of course, it's a massive validation for us and all of the work we put into our solution. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time from my point, and I'd like to hand over back again to Wael, who will follow up with a couple of next steps that we'd like to discuss with you. So thank you very much, and Wael, the floor is all yours, my friends.
Thank you, Michael. So we touched on compliance and DORA today, emphasizing the importance of, as you said, continuous compliance and enhancing the resilience of critical systems through automation. Each firm has unique challenges. To address this, we'll offer each delegate a personalized consultation to identify and tackle specific issues, ensuring your systems are not just compliant, but resilient. We're eager to extend our support with the help of Runecast. We're looking forward to answering any of your questions and provide clarifications in the upcoming consultations. So please do look out for a follow-up email with an invitation to your personalized assessment. I'd also like to thank our speaker because you've clearly demonstrated the expertise with working with firms like NATO, Ministry of Defense, and the US Army. And I'd like to thank all of you, our delegates, for investing your valuable time to explore the challenges and opportunities of DORA with us. We are here to help. We are committed to ensuring your systems are optimized, resilient, and demonstrate compliance. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to Wael, you can reach out to me, no problem at all, and we'd love to talk to you. Thank you, and see you soon.